So what is the biggest sailboat in the world, and why was it built, and for who? And why did the international community just seize it and place it under arrest? This week on Everything You Need to Know, we're talking about Sailing Boat A. Not like A something. The boat's just called A. A. Now, we've never talked about a super yacht here on Lady K because, well, we just don't usually care. But this super yacht in particular is of interest both because it is sort of the biggest sailboat in the world, and because of the war in Ukraine, it kind of got itself arrested. It's also a great example of what can be done in the boat building world when the best and brightest on the entire planet get together with an unlimited budget and decide to build a sailboat backed by some questionable billionaire and tons of money. It's also a really good example of how billionaires prefer to have assets instead of liquid cash. The story of sailing vessel A starts with a motor vessel A. Yeah, there's two of them. A man called Andrew Melnichenko. You've probably heard his name a few times in the news. Andrew's a Russian billionaire who got his start trading currency right after the fall of the Soviet Union. And then he opened his own bank, as you do. And then he started trading commodities. He's supposed to be worth some $20 billion, which may be chump change compared to the big dogs like Bezos, but nonetheless, he has more money that he knows what to do with. So what is any self-respecting billionaire to do with all of his money? Well, you try to hide it. Dodging taxes at the highest level of wealth is in itself a billion-dollar industry. And we could talk for hours about how billionaires pull off paying little to no tax, but for the purposes of our episode, we're just going to talk about yachts. And while these super yachts or mega yachts may be a status symbol amongst the super rich, yachts are also a great place to hide your money. They use a company that they control, these billionaires, to commission a yacht. The company orders the yacht to be built. The yacht is then built for that company and registered in some country that has little to no taxation on yachts, like Bermuda. Then the yacht is leased to another company that billionaire also controls. So ultimately there's this web that's so convoluted that no one knows who owns the yacht, and the billionaire in question is free to use it whenever they want. Which they do, as if it was theirs, which it isn't, but it is, but not on paper. So when the billionaire is investigated for any, say, financial misgivings, their $100 million yacht doesn't even show up on the radar. It's money hidden and tax avoided. But then if they need money later, they sell the yacht. Back to our billionaire Andrew. In 2004, Motor Yacht A was commissioned to be built, but at the time it was owned and commissioned by a company called Polaris, which has no connection to our shady boy Andrew. Andrew, being the real commissioner of the boat at the time, did come out later, and Polaris was just a cover. So it's already kind of weird. The boat was delivered to the tune of $300 million, and it came out at 390 feet. This is a 400-foot powerboat, making it one of the biggest and most expensive yachts in the world at the time. Now, the owner gave the builder sort of free rein when they commissioned this boat. He just said, I want it to have 6 cabins for my friends, and I want it to blend well with the sea, sort of like a whale with minimum wake and to be one with the sea. That was the only instruction. We know now that the owner didn't care very much about how the boat turned out because it was more of a tax-free savings account than it was to be a yacht. Sort of a $300 million pile of fiberglass with no real owner. That was really all that mattered. It's like buying an expensive painting and giving it to your friend to hang on their wall. Not technically your painting anymore, but if you need to sell it, it's there. Moving on. In 2015, someone whose name rhymes with Andrew needed another boat to be built, but this time not a run-of-the-mill 400-foot powerboat. This time they were going to build something special, something that had never been done before. To say that sailing vessel A is the biggest sailboat in the world comes with a bit of a caveat. It's actually classified as a sail-assisted motor yacht. So it's not exactly a sailboat. But without splitting hairs, it does have sails. It is 468 feet long and has basically earned the title of the biggest sailboat in the world. The propulsion consists of a variable speed hybrid power plant, which is basically 2 massive diesel engines feeding 2 very efficient electric motors, kind of like a freight train, and 2 variable pitch props but also 3 masts, the world's tallest freestanding carbon fiber custom-made masts made by a company called Magma Structures. The furling booms, also carbon fiber. Doyle Sails, you know who they are, we all know and love them. They did the custom one-off sails, which are completely automated, full battened, and also largely carbon fiber, and the rigging was partially developed for cargo ships, but Sailing Vessel A made use of that technology. The boat was delivered in Kiel, Germany, which is on the Baltic Sea, but to get out to the North Sea and ultimately to the world's oceans, it had to go through the Drogden Strait, but its draft was too deep, so they had to run the boat in what they called light mode, with all of her tanks nearly empty, actually having to make use of the sails, which is pretty cool. The boat then sailed to Spain to finish getting kitted out. This $600 million super yacht has some cool stuff in it too, of course, as you'd expect. It's all steel. It has 8 decks with 7 staterooms in complete luxury. Crew quarters for the 54 crew members it takes to make the whole thing work. The master stateroom is fit for any supervillain with fingerprint scanners to get in the locked door and a bomb-proof windows, because bomb-proof windows. The boat has multiple elevators, but the coolest one is inside one of the masts, and it takes you up some 200 feet to a crow's nest, which I think is probably where I'd hang out most of the time. That's got to be a great view. If not there, then I'd hang out in the underwater observation room, I'm not kidding, that they built into the keel. The glass in here is a foot thick. Can you imagine hanging out down here watching those massive props spin? Now, with all those masts, you might be thinking, where's the helipad? What kind of supervillain or super yacht owner doesn't have their own helipad? Well, it does, as well as 4 swimming pools and a room full of water toys like jet skis. The looks of this boat tend to be hate it or love it, and other than the very interesting shape, there don't seem to be any windows or openings when you first look at it. It just looks like a steel wall. But if you look closely, there's actually a lot of windows and a lot of openings. The windows just have a 2-way film on them so you can't see in, because supervillain. There are lots of openings too, like balconies and fold-out swim decks and places where the boats pop out of the side, and they're all cleverly hidden when not in use. They also hid the anchors behind opening ports so that they wouldn't ruin the lines of the ship. Now, when you have to get to shore, Sailing Vessel A also comes with tenders. 4 different tenders. There's a go-fast tender to play with that you can get into town really quick or just go fly around like a lunatic in the anchorage, and it's said that it'll top 52 knots at speed. There's another tender that sort of looks like a submarine. It isn't, but it's enclosed, and that's to transport 8 guests if the weather's bad. Also, there's a glass bubble sort of tender for the good weather, but my favorite is the pickup truck tender. It's this one. It's basically just a big flatbed to run into town to pick up supplies. Well, this boat has always been veiled in some supervillain level of secrecy. It does have some action that it saw with some legendary parties that were hosted aboard, but pictures are very few and far between. We do know that billionaire Andrew had hired some entertainment for a few of these parties, including Lenny Kravitz and Snoop Dogg. Lady K Sailing is brought to you by patrons, people who give a couple of bucks an episode to make this whole channel possible. I want to give a big shout out to the newest patrons. We have Marius, Thomas, Chris, Alex, and Maddie. Thank you guys so much for joining the team. Now, it may sound throughout this video like I don't particularly like this boat, and I am trying to be unbiased, which is usually my goal on this channel, but truth be told, I don't like it. From the guest room done completely in white stingray hide to the pure opulence of it all, I don't think we should have any one person with enough money to own something this ridiculous. I don't think anyone, even billionaires, should be able to hide their money and avoid taxes. And honestly, I just think it's kind of ugly. It just looks like a big stainless steel version of a bathtub toy supervillain death ship to me. Which brings me to my point. This boat was recently seized. Actually, the legal term is arrested. Seized implies that it was taken away from its owner, which it wasn't. The owner still owns it right now, and he has full access to it. It's just not allowed to leave port, which is technically called arrested, even though it's a boat. As we know, when Russia invaded Ukraine, the world agreed that we needed to do something. However, any action of war would immediately result in World War III, so we had to do a little less than full-on war. We introduced sanctions. And one of the things we did was to start investigating any Russian billionaire with sort of shady business practices and questionable behavior to put pressure on the Russian government. And of course, our billionaire Andrew was on the list. And he owns 2 super yachts, so the world started hunting down Russian super yachts, which was super cool at the time. And we saw the biggest migration of super yachts we've ever seen, until one by one they all started shutting off their AIS transmitters. The yacht would one day be anchored in a place like Gibraltar, and the next day, gone. Now, shutting off the AIS while sailing these things is illegal, except in very specific circumstances, such as if you're being chased by Somali pirates. In those cases, you're allowed to shut off the AIS, but you have to tell authorities why you did it. These super yachts just all seemed to shut off AIS all at the same time, right when the sanctions came out. Then, when the authorities went looking for the yachts in their last known location, they were gone. Now, something cool happened on the internet. There was a few YouTube channels and different websites and groups and stuff that sort of popped up with the goal of tracking these things down. And whenever a boat would enter a harbor, somebody would snap a picture of it and upload it, and it would just go viral on social media. And that was how sort of the regular boating community figured out where all these super yachts were popping up. And ultimately, a lot of them have been arrested. So Sailing Yacht A was finally arrested by Italian authorities. They caught up with Sailing Yacht A in a port, seized it, which is still where it sits now, pending the outcome of investigations into shady billionaire Andrew. In fact, a lot of these super yachts are just sitting all over the world in exactly the same situation right now. So, what do you think about super yachts? Do you love them? Do you hate them? Have you ever been on one? Do you have a cool story for us? Let us know in the comments. That's it for this week, guys. If you like this episode, please give it a thumbs up. It helps with the YouTube witchcraft, and I will see you next week.